And here comes Milwaukee. Forbes another three. Oh, no! This is the Random Scrub Heat Podcast.
Welcome to the Random Scrub Heat Podcast. Are you tired of us yet? 2 pods in 5 days, and we'll have a recap pod in a couple days after the draft is over? You're going to be fucking sick of us. We have Adam Borai with us, making a very rare appearance, emphasis on rare, and I have Harry, and we are here to talk about a little bit of the NBA draft. Our last episode, we kind of touched on it a little bit. Adam, I'm not sure if you listened to it, and if not, that's fine, because we're going to ask you some of the same questions we went over. If you did, cool. You're going to hear some of these questions for a second time. I wanted to start with, before we get into any specific players, because it doesn't really matter if they don't keep the pick, do you think they're going to even use this pick tomorrow night?
Yes. They're going to use it. They're going to draft someone, and then we're going to be faked out with a bunch of possible trades in which they're not going to do anything about. And then right after that, they're going to sign him to a 30-day hold where we can't trade the player. And then we're going to make ourselves believe that after the 30 days are up, they're going to trade the player again. And then we're going to have a press conference where Pat says we're going to see his name in the rafters. And then that'll be that.
Jaime Jaquez is 2.0, essentially.
Harry 2.0, Tyler 2.0, Pam
No,
2.0.
Don't bring that bad juju. we don't need that. He survives so many off seasons. I think he's out of Uno reverses this off season. We'll see. Well, actually, while we're there, do you think this is the off season? Do you think he survives another one and dons a Miami Heat uniform come October?
This is sort of like one of those. It's a question of, do I think Jimmy survives or do I think Tyler survives? Because I think it's more so one or the other. And to be frank, if Jimmy's staying, Tyler's not surviving, and he's going elsewhere. His time's up, and honestly, I kind of think he's staying. I kind of feel like they're gonna lean into the youth movement a little bit, and if they don't trade Jimmy right away, they're gonna move him eventually, which means Tyler has a greater chance of staying.
That's actually true. Like, I wanted to talk more about the draft, but since we're on the topic too, it's like you feel like this is probably the last offseason where you're going to get good picks back. You're going to get a good return, let's just call it, for Jimmy, because those knees aren't getting younger. He avoided serious injury his whole Miami Heat career, despite all the mileage everyone was talking about, all the Tibbs minutes, all the years, even though since he's gotten to Miami, it's been a little bit less that, but he's avoided them for so long. But now you're starting to see the cracks in the armor a little bit, and we don't know if what he's going to even return to, right? Because it was a sprain, right? It was an MCL sprain, I think it was. Wasn't a tear. He didn't need surgery or anything like that. But a sprain can turn into a tear as you get older, and he's not getting any younger. But I think this is probably the last year where you could get a good return for him. So I hope that it's Tyler that's gone. I really do, and we like to be positive here. But I don't know, Harry. How do you feel about it? Or you can ask Adam a different question if you wanted to get back to draft talk. Up to you, my friend.
I mean, it's shit or get off the pot time. So I would really like Tyler gone for a multitude of reasons. I don't care, even if they do find that Jimmy's ready to move on and they're ready to move him and they're ready to go younger, as Adam's kind of alluding to. I just don't really see where Tyler fits on this team in any capacity, even as a youth movement. I don't really see him as a guy that can stay healthy and can play in the postseason. I don't see him as a guy that is really making players around him better. And I don't think we need any more of a sample size with him. I think we kind of know who he is. And, I think people are kind of seeing that the Heat maybe jumped the gun a little bit with the extension that they gave him. Maybe it's a contract that doesn't look as bad in a couple seasons because they're paying, everybody else all this money as the cap continues to rise. But, he's just not a guy that's really going to help the Heat win. He kind of belongs on a team that's probably not a playoff team where he can take as many shots as he needs. And, they can pretend that that's, a good efficient offense in the NBA these days. So My personal opinion is I don't care who it's for or how it gets done. I'm finding a way to move Tyler off this team. Maybe there's a team that still likes him. We've talked about, we've heard rumors in years past. The Nets were kind of interested. The Jazz maybe were interested. I don't know if that was closer to when he was drafted or because Danny Ainge was there and he was a big Hero fan when he was running the Celtics. I don't know what his stock is like league wide. I would assume it's pretty polarizing. And I'm not sure what the return is looking like for a guy like that. So, I understand the Heat are not necessarily going to be willing to sell him for pennies on the dollar, but I'd sell him for a 50-cent piece. I'd sell him for, 2 nickels and a dime. Like, I'm ready to make that move. I think we've talked about it for many years. And I think Adam's done a good job of mentioning it in years past. The Heat kind of had this nice window to make moves and really compete for a championship. Adam had kind of been talking about, the year they got Kyle Lowry and they were the 1 seed. There were opportunities during that season, during the draft afterwards, to really make moves to complement this squad, and they always sat on their hands. And I think it's a good opportunity to look a little bit north of them, different sport. But we had another, first-time champion in South Florida last night. Congrats to the Florida Panthers. They made what I think the majority of people would have deemed it as an incredibly risky move. They moved a fan favorite, a guy who had been with the Panthers forever, a very productive player, but a guy who kind of struggled in the postseason. And they added a first-round pick to that. And they brought in a young guy, a hungry guy, someone that was a bit underrated around the NHL in Matthew Tkachuk. And now they've gone to the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years in a row. They won last night in 7 games. I think that's where you kind of have to look with this Heat team. You have the building blocks of a squad that can really do this. It's time to stop being so conservative. It's time to stop being so scared. It's time to stop pretending that, undrafted free agents are the way to round out the roster. It's time to give real talent to Spo and let him cook and see what happens, because you're watching probably one of the most unique eras of parity in sports right now. You have 6 straight different champions in the NBA. I think you have 7 or 8 in the NHL. NFL's tough with Mahomes, but you just really have an opportunity to make moves to win. And I think the Heat have just kind of turned into this team that they've used culture and competition as a way to justify mediocrity. And I kind of think that's where we are. So if they're keeping the pick and Adam's right and they're going to fake us out, for another 2 months, okay. But I think it's time to really, make moves to determine if you really want to compete with the other teams, not only in the East, but out West. I think the West is the teams that are really the ones to look out for. Boston's going to be good again, but got to watch out for the teams out West. And I think it's time to balance the books before the cap gets real restrictive. So then I think they need to find a way to dip even below this first apron if possible, to keep their moves open, to have flexibility throughout the season, to be able to grab guys who end up getting cut and their buyout candidates. I think they have to figure this out. So if that involves dumping Hero, if that involves dumping Duncan, Terry Rozier, whatever they need to do to figure this out, this is the time. And LJ, if we're still talking about Tyler Hero, come October, I don't know how many more of these I have in me, to be honest. So that's all I got.
It's your Magic Johnson in that press conference?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be here.
Thank you for slamming home the lob. Harry talked about the parity in the league, right, Adam, that we've seen recently, not just in the NBA, but across major sports, honestly. You saw the Panthers be able to reach the precipice last night. Rainforest Cafe was going wild, man. I could hear the elephants from here. It was crazy. Good for them. They made the trade. They were clawing at the precipice. They couldn't get over the hump, so they made a little shakeup to add more talent to their team. You saw the Celtics just do it with Drew Holiday and Kristaps. They got to the precipice. They couldn't get over the hump. They made necessary moves. Then you look back, who else did it? The Bucks. Ironically enough, for Drew Holiday, that what Miami's asked in the first round, then went on to win a championship. These are all rivals that your head honcho, Jimmy Butler, is when he plays is 2-1 against the Bucks and the Celtics. That doesn't matter. That's cool for like a, for morality, I guess, but you don't have any hardware to show for it. So in terms of making a shakeup move to add more talent in, last night in the spaces you were talking about Lauri Markkanen, I feel like to me that's the most realistic, where like you look at what Utah would want compared. That's just what I think, because I don't think Donovan's that realistic. When I think about a player that can make a difference for the Heat, Lauri I think would pair extremely well next to Bam. I feel like Miami has enough to get a conversation significantly going there. And we know Danny Ainge, if there's one man that values that white guy, it's Danny Ainge. And if you want to move Tyler, now's the time. You move that third guy, is what we've seen a lot of these teams do. Tyler's the third guy. How do you feel about Lauri coming here? What do you think a trade for Lauri would kind of look like?
I would do it in a heartbeat. Fits Bam's timeline pretty seamlessly and perfectly. I'm moving Tyler. I'm moving the picks. I'm moving Jovic. I wouldn't move Jaime. I would move everything that's not Jaime, unless you're just moving Jaime, if that makes sense. Obviously, there's contracts involved and the salary, but get Lowry on this team, and you have your front court solidified for the next 8-9 years. So that's the route I would definitely go. I don't think it's realistic. I think Utah wants to build around him starting this offseason. They're definitely one of those teams I can see trading for win now pieces to at least stay afloat. And we can say that that's the wrong approach. It's too early for the Utah Jazz to start doing that, but I think that's just how Danny Ainge is wired, to take a few losing seasons and then start to go in and use those assets that he's gained over the years to improve his roster substantially. I think the most realistic option is Brandon Ingram. And I think that that's what we have to start setting ourselves up for, becoming a very realistic option very soon.
So, Adam, let me ask you two questions based on the, those hypotheticals you proposed. First of all, with the Utah thing and Lauri Markkanen, is Danny Ainge the kind of person would either say, Lauri, here's the extension, we want to get you signed and locked in so we can build around you and figure out the rest of the roster? And if he says no, or he wants to wait to see if he can make even more money next summer, because I believe he can be a free agent next year, does then Ainge put him on the market and see if he can get, as many picks as he can and just kind of go full rebuild and basically go into a Sam Presti Thunder situation where they essentially will have, as many picks or second most picks in the NBA, where they can go out and find the next guy who they want to build around? Or are they kind of looking at the Lauri market first, and then if that doesn't pan out, or they can't get the picks they're looking for or the players are looking for, then they're doing an extension? What order do you think that's going in when Ainge is trying to figure this out?
Extension first. If it's declined, then look to trade. He's too young to even think about, because how old is he? He's 27, right? 26 or 27, around
that sounds right.
that
I'll double
age.
check.
Mid to late 20s.
Yeah, he's too young for you to move because you're fearful of him leaving or not being able to win within his window. So if you give him that extension, you might be good by the time he's 30. 3 or 4 years down the line, you now have a bunch of cap space. You have the ability to sign a star player or trade for a star player. You might be in business of making it deep in the Western Conference at that juncture. So why would you want to move off of him? I think when it comes to Danny Ainge, you move him if he rejects flat out that extension offer and says, I'm going to wait a little bit and see what I can get from either other teams, or I want to see what this team looks like. That to me is a sign of let's start heading in the direction of a breakup.
Okay, so I looked it up. Laurie just turned 27 last month, so you're right. He's like just about to probably start his prime. All right, so that's what Utah's doing. So you're saying maybe turn our attention to Brandon Ingram. He's been an interesting player out in New Orleans for the Pelicans. Think he's had some really good seasons and then some really underwhelming seasons. Is a team looking to, obviously New Orleans is looking to move him because he's got 1 year and then he's a free agent. They don't want to extend him at the money he's looking for, which is understandable on their part. Is a team who's going to acquire him comfortable acquiring him simply for the year and seeing how it goes before they offer him, the money he's looking for, as the team that acquires him could offer him the most money? Or is this something where a team is going to acquire him and then try to extend him, 6 months later, where the price of what he would go for would depend on how they're planning it. Obviously, a rental would be cheaper, but the trade and extend, um, could be a bit pricier depending on how much the team likes him. You think the Heat are interested, or you think like you just know he's getting moved and you're not sure where yet?
I think the Heat are definitely interested. They wanted him 2 years ago. BI was very open to a move to Miami 2 years ago. Tyler and Duncan were the two main pieces at that point. I know that Griffin really liked Duncan. I don't know about Tyler. Tyler wouldn't make sense in a trade now with that crowded backcourt that they have. But Miami was definitely interested in BI, and I think they still are. And if conversations haven't been had already with Miami and I think they're being had now. And at this point, it's about whether or not they're willing to accept the price of a 1 year rental at minimum. BI is the perfect study for what the Heat are or are not willing to do when it comes to trading your assets at this point.
Do you think that same type of trade um, still would work for New Orleans? Essentially, like, Duncan's probably a bit of a better asset now with the way he's playing and the fact he doesn't have that much time left on his deal. The money he's making is not insane compared to probably what you would pay for a guy doing what he did last year. And then your thought would be maybe they take Tyler. He doesn't necessarily fit on that team next to McCollum or the other guards that they have, but getting an asset that could be on the books for 3 years is probably better than losing Ingram for nothing, is what, the alternative would be. And so they're thinking, hey, we can take Tyler and flip him to a third team. We can keep him for a bit as our sixth man, where a role that he's kind of done well in, see what happens, and then flip him down the line. At this point, we're just trying to, he's been very clear. Sorry, I just forgot the name of New Orleans GM, but he's kind of been very clear this summer that he's ready to make some changes. They've run this team back enough times where they know this is not going to win, and they're ready to make some moves in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think I don't think they would be willing to accept Tyler, but I do think they'd be more receptive towards Terry Rozier. And it seems a little flawed in the thinking. I think the Miami Heat would agree that they would rather trade Terry over Tyler in a potential move because they offer very different skill sets, and Tyler is unique in that he plays a role that CJ McCollum plays very well in New Orleans that you shouldn't replicate it because it wouldn't be a recipe of success. Terry, on the other hand, you can easily see him as a six-man role where he would, I think he would thrive, next to Herb Jones in New Orleans. And even if they don't like that fit, Terry is more easily tradable to another team where you can get an asset to New Orleans for them to accept. If it's Duncan and a piece from a different team that's maybe a front court piece, I think they'd be more willing and more receptive towards that than what Miami has to offer. that is something that I would really, really look at, regardless of whether or not Jimmy is staying next year, because to me, it offers the highest upside of the realistic options, while at the same time keeping the powder, quote unquote, dry for when you want to make that additional move and really solidify your direction.
I see that. Like I see the vision with Brandon Ingram. I'm personally not a fan. I don't like the way that he would necessarily fit, depending on what you give up, right? Because it sounds like you would probably wind up keeping Tyler in that situation. Whether or not you'd move him to a separate destination remains to be seen. But at least then it makes sense why New Orleans wouldn't want another injury-prone guard or ball handler because they already have Zion, who's a much better player, but obviously roles are filled in certain regards, and I don't think Tyler would necessarily fill that for them. But I think it would be a little too congested for Miami, but in terms of like a good barometer on what Miami would be willing to do to bring in a talent like that, I think you're right. Brandon Ingram's a pretty good barometer for that. Now we'll move over into the draft. Now that's the whole reason. That's what I titled the damn pod. So I guess it's about time we talk about what Miami's going to do with the pick. Do you expect, because I feel like if this player is available at 15, Miami's going to pull the trigger on it. Do you expect Ron Holland to even be available? Should we entertain that concept at all at 15?
No, I think 13 with Sacramento is where we start to see the line being drawn with where he goes. But if he is there and the Heat don't draft him, it would be the biggest divergence in what we've seen from the Miami Heat when it comes to drafting than I think we've seen in a long time, where it's the most prototypical Heat player that they elect to not go with for some unforeseen reason.
And
you go ahead, Harry.
And Adam, you mentioned 13 because that pick has kind of been mentioned in trade rumors, right? So you're saying like if he were to fall there, whether Sacramento takes Holland themselves or uses that as a way to move the pick for another team that would be interested in him. That's kind of what you're thinking with Holland.
That and the sense of Ron Holland is more of an NBA ready player when it comes to his body type. He can come in, I think, and play the Haywood Highsmith role as a defensive player immediately. Just somebody off the bench. He doesn't have to hit shots. He doesn't have to dribble. Nothing. Just deflect the ball and play good man on defense. That's it. And I think he can do that pretty well because of his size and his archetype. So 13 for me is that limit. Other players, on the other hand, I think have a greater possibility of falling.
And some of those players, go ahead, wet the beak for us here. What are some of those players you think that might actually slip to 15 that probably shouldn't be there?
I can see Rob Dillingham slipping as far as 17 or 18. 17. He's not getting past Clutch, the Clutch Lakers. So 17. Topic, that's how you say his name, Topic. The other Nikola, the other Nikola, he can definitely start slipping. But when it comes to other players, I just don't see this being a draft where, every year we look at the draft and we say, okay, these are your top 10. If somebody of these top 10 drop to 11, someone's going to get fired. This is the biggest travesty, whatever. How could this happen? I think this is a draft where if somebody who's projected to go 7 goes 17, no one's really going to bat an eye because no one more than any other draft knows what the heck is going on. And we're just going to find ourselves where we are in October and when we see if these players can actually play or not.
I also think, it's a good point. It's such a hodgepodge kind of draft. You don't really know if you're getting a great value or if a player slips to 17, 18, they might actually have a lottery value there. It's definitely not a justice situation, which I feel like a lot of Heat fans have been a little mentally scorned from. I guess we'll go to the antithesis of Rob Dillingham, or not Rob Dillingham, I'm sorry, of Ron Holland, because that's a player that could potentially slide a little bit, that people were projecting go really high. And now I talked about it on the last pod, and I think Antonardo just made a video about it for some free publicity. Thank you, Ant. You're welcome, Ant. We have Terrence Shannon, who I absolutely love. He had the accusations and all that jazz. He's out of the first round, and now he's creeping his way back in. Rob's sliding. Terrence is kind of climbing a little bit. If he's what he's going to be there at 15, I haven't seen anyone. The highest I've seen him is literally 17 with the Lakers. If he's there at 15, does he appeal to you in that regard? Because he can play defense. He's athletic. He fits the mold of a Heat player that's a little bit older. His shooting is good, but his rim pressure is insane, and that's. I guess they would kind of play him as a guard, maybe as an oversized 2, but this team lacks any solace at all of rim pressure, rim attacking. There's no one on the roster right now that I feel like can do even a smidge of what Terrence can do. So do you like that idea of him kind of being there? I guess it depends on how the draft shakes out, but you'd have to imagine he's going to be there at 15, and if Miami wants him, he'll be available.
I don't see a reason if to put it this way, whoever the Heat like, the minute that they're drafted, I like it too. I like the pick. Even if it's Zach Edey, I'm fine with it. Maybe they saw something in his workouts that blew them away, and we're gonna see it in summer league in October. I don't care. I think I trust them at this point with their decisions, especially last year with Jaime. I think that was the first time where I was at the draft. And I sat there and Adam Silver said his name, and I said, "Who? What? UCLA? That guy?" When we had Cam Whitmore, and that draft immediately told me, you know what, give him a shot. And then right as summer league hit, we knew he was good. So when it comes to a guy like Terrence, I could see it. I could definitely see that being the pick. I don't hate anyone in this draft. It's more so I really like a few guys, namely being the guys that we already mentioned, Ron Holland, Topic, Dillingham, even Khalil Ware. I like those guys. But if it ends up being someone else, all the power to him.
In that same vein, Isaiah Collier. That's been the name I've seen the most. Is just him from UFC. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying that if I haven't looked through that many. I've just scrolled through Twitter, like mock drafts. I scrolled through Twitter, and the consensus I'm seeing is everyone would be very, very happy if he was the pick. I'm torn on it. Again, it's been a weird stretch for Heat picks where if I usually like the pick, they wind up flaming out, i.e. Justice. And if I hate the pick, it usually winds up working out just fine. So I guess in terms of Zach Edey, if that's who the pick is, Zach Edey's going to be a Hall of Famer if you're basing it off of that, because I would slam my head through the drywall if that's the pick. I can't do that. But back to the question at hand, you're not a big fan of Collier at 15?
No, I want them to make him a more splashier move when it comes to the player profile, whether it's a center that can shoot threes or the 3-and-D wing that can dribble or has some sort of insane length. I want someone who they can mold to bend the rules of the game a little bit, where they can they have some sort of ability that you don't see out of a player of that same size and stature. So Isaiah Collier, I think he's more of a defensive player, and it's great. Another Derek White. Derek White is a phenomenal player, and I think I'm okay with that if it's for Carter. But at that point, if a guy like Holland is available and you go with Isaiah, I don't think I'd be too thrilled about it, but I'd accept it.
I feel like they could probably, no matter, like you said, if they make the pick, I trust that their ability, aside of Precious, who I think everyone was a little upset with when they made that pick in the time anyway, because I think that's when it really started. Well, I guess technically Bam, not that everyone was upset about it, but that's kind of when it started, when the name was called and you're like, who? Bam Adebayo. And then it was like Precious Achiuwa. There's so many different players on the board that we like. I guess it would technically fill into that role too. But Harry, do you have any other question you want to ask Adam before we kind of move on to the what he thinks about the second round? Because that's when the gems are found, apparently.
Yeah, Adam, I was just going to ask you, that there's a rumor tonight that, the Heat are looking to move up. Memphis is looking to move back. the Heat are not a team that usually moves up in the draft. It seems like it would be kind of weird in a draft that we've kind of classified as there's not too many stars, top end talent in this draft. This is kind of where you're going to find your role players, your 6, 7, 8 men off the bench. So obviously Memphis is looking for something, or they're concerned that the guy they want is not going to be there at 9, and there's guys they'd be willing to move back for. So do they want something from the Heat? Or are they just more comfortable, assuming they don't get – it sounds like they want Klingon out of UConn, who's obviously going to be like a top 3 pick. So if they don't get him –
Is he?
You don't think so?
I don't think he's getting past the Hornets.
I think he's – where are the Hornets? 6?
6, yeah, 6.
I don't know about that.
I know they like Mark Williams, but I just feel like when you have a player like that.
You know what? We're 24 hours from the draft. I'm gonna just say 1 is the French dude, 2 Sarr, 3 Shepherd, 4 is gonna be the Spurs, right?
Yeah.
Spurs is gonna be Castle.
Okay.
At 4. 5 is the G League guy.
Mateus,
whatever. Yeah, that guy. 6 is going to be, if it's not Klingon, it's going to be, and I'm blinking. Who else is going to be available around that time?
Harry, I'm looking at you.
I'm trying to remember. I haven't.
It's such a nobody draft.
It is. It's full of really good role players in the back half, but
hold up, but you penciling in Reed Shepherd at number 3 to the Rockets?
Yeah, I think he's
had such a weird rise to me, but I mean,
he's a Tyler hero of the draft in my mind. Like I look at him and I say, okay, at his peak, 20 point per game score, right there. But that's about it.
Yeah.
Even that's a bit like rambunctious for me too. It was so funny throughout the whole college season. I was like, I think Dillingham's better than Reed Shepherd. And then the year ended and it's like, well, the inverse is kind of playing out now in this weird ass timeline that we're in.
If you think Klingon's dropping like that, then I think Memphis would move up to get him at like 7 or something.
Would they move up? Do they need to?
Didn't they give away some of their picks too?
I don't know. I guess maybe I'm reading the wrong stuff because I thought there were a lot of teams clamoring for him in like the top 5. So
here it is. Cody Williams at 5, possibly. At 6, Stefan Castle. 7 is where you can start to see Klingon. I think 7. And if it's not 7, why would Memphis have to move?
Yeah, no, you're right. Well, unless the Spurs want to move back. I don't know. It's gonna be one of those interesting drafts because I don't think the mocks are gonna be close. I hope you're right, Adam.
Really?
I hope we can look back and
a little bit of breaking news.
But yeah, wait, what happened?
No, I was making fun of you.
Oh, that's fine.
That Dalton guy,
Dalton Neck, yeah.
He's a Blazer. He's definitely a Blazer.
That's a Joe Cronin pick if I've ever seen one.
That's at 7. Right now, you're back to the Spurs at 8. Devin Carter at 8.
I hope Edie goes. I hope Edie goes to Portland before us. I really don't want him on the
Just
board.
keep saying names, Adam. Just keep saying names to push Ron Holland to 15.
Listen, there you go. Devin Carter at 8, and now at 9. If Memphis is staying where they are, that's where you have Klingon.
Yeah.
And then at 10, you start to see the who's at 10? The Jazz?
Yeah.
They fought for that 10th pick.
All hell breaks loose at 10 at that point.
All right.
Anyone can go anywhere. Yeah.
I'm gonna write these down, and we're gonna see how you do tomorrow.
Yeah, go back, re-listen to it, and just write it all down. All right, we'll go to the second round. No, I don't want to go for too much longer. I know you're a busy man, but it's a pipe dream, but it's my pipe dream. I'm a Florida fan, as many of you know, many of our listeners know. I'm a big believer in Zion Pullen. If the Heat, I don't think that the Heat, because Adam, you're already talking about it. I don't think the Heat go defense in the first round, unless Ron Holland's there, in which case you can work with the offense there. He's got a good bag to work with too. If they go offense in the first round, like they probably should, You can afford defense in this rare age we live in where the Heat have a second-round pick. Zion, I think he runs a pretty good offense. I would trust him with the ball in his hand way more than I trust Tyler Hero to initiate offense, at least for other people. And he plays very good perimeter defense. Do you think that he would be there at the Heat's second-round pick, and would you take him there? Or is there another player that you're kind of sifting through in the second round?
I don't even care about the second round until after the first round's over. I don't know a
Well said.
single thing about any of these players. I don't care. Unless the Heat pick 31, why do I care?
Well, to make me happy. Can you just say, so we can clip it? Can you just say that the Heat are...
I've actually heard just this morning that they have a bounty on all Florida players. And there's a rule.
Define bounty.
No Florida play. I'm going to keep it at that.
That's all I got, Harry. You want to ask anything else before we wrap here?
Well, if you want my prediction, I think they like that guy out of Arizona, Kashad Johnson. I think they brought him in. They like him. He shot just under 40% from three.
These are not real people.
I didn't make up a name. He's a real person. I wish him luck in his career, if it's not with the Heat. But yeah, I think the second round is good. It's good insurance for the Heat, and that's something that they kind of, they need good young guys with talent that can play on this team, because I just think they've been trying to squeeze talent out of guys that don't always have it. And the second round, having this pick, which we've talked about, it's kind of rare for them to have a second round pick. They only have this pick because of where they fell in the draft. Yeah, the Dwayne Wade trade that we got that pick back. So just good insurance for the Heat, and we'll see how that goes for them.
Dwayne Wade's parting gift. But also, primary sponsor of The Basement, Simple Health Advisors. Insurance doesn't need to be complicated. Email them, give them a call today. Tell them that The Basement sent you. Email them JPugh, P-O-U-G-H, like George says, J-O-U-P-H, at simplehealthadvisors.com, or give them a ring at 321-345-7738. Just had to shoehorn that in at the last second. We love you guys. Take care. I'll ramble for a second so Harry can find the outro button. Take care. Be good people. Thank you, Adam, for making a rare appearance. We love everyone. Goodbye.
Need a stop and a rebound. Fournier for three.
Oh, my. That was the Random Scrub Heat podcast.